Hey, LinkedIn, and welcome to Business Unusual. This is a live show where we talk about the ways coronavirus is impacting the way we work and the way we live. I am Susie Jackson. I am a news editor at LinkedIn, coming to you live from my home in New York City. And on the show today, I extra want to hear from you. This show is a check-in. I want to know how you're doing. We are pretty far into this work from home, social distancing, quarantine moment. I myself have been doing this for 7 weeks. Maybe you're not quite at 7 weeks. Maybe you're beyond that. Maybe you're not quite there. Maybe you are not even working from home. Perhaps you're an essential worker who is still going out in the world every day and facing all of the uncertainty and anxiety there. As we talk to on the show today, I want to hear from you. How are you feeling? How are you doing? Are you feeling burnt out? Let me know. Drop your comments into the stream. Use the hashtag Business Unusual to post on LinkedIn. This situation that you're in now, was it hastily thrown together as it was for me and I think for a lot of us? Are you feeling the strain? Are you working at all hours or at odd hours? Are you stressed about how you're spending your time or not spending your time? Are there things you wish you could be doing, but you just don't seem to have the capacity to get to them? Are you feeling overwhelmed by a lack of routine or by whatever your new routine is? Anything you want to talk about, I want to talk about it today. We have a wonderful guest joining us who is really well poised to talk about this with us. I want to bring on Celeste Headlee. She is a journalist, a former public radio host, and the author of a book that is so appropriate for this moment, although I know you didn't write it with this in mind. The book is called Do Nothing: How to Break Away from Overworking, overdoing, and underliving. Celeste, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me, you wrote this book before coronavirus happened. It came out just about maybe the first week that at least things in New York City were starting to get a little bit hairy. Bring us back before this pandemic moment and just tell us, what were you thinking? What was wrong with the world that you were writing this book to address?
Yeah, I mean, the book took 3 years of research, and so I had no idea this is where we would be. But the reason I started writing it was because I found myself to be overworked and overwhelmed. And the kicker for me was that I had finally reached the place in my life after spending most of my days being pretty broke. I mean, going paycheck to paycheck. I'd finally reached a place of financial stability, and I'd long thought uh, a lot of things would change at that point, and a lot of them got worse. I was even more overscheduled. I was even more stressed. I had less free time when I thought I would have more. And so I realized that what I thought was the problem, a lack of money, maybe lack of power or agency, was not the problem. I had to look a little deeper, and I just started peeling back the onion layers on what was going on until I ended up where this book is.
And where is that book for people? What did the layers of the onion reveal?
When I first started researching, I really expected, first of all, I was researching for my own benefit, right? I was trying to fix a personal problem. It wasn't expected to be a book at that point. And I expected to find out that the bad guy was technology. I expected to find out that I spent too much time on my cell phone and my laptop and my tablet, and that if I wanted to be less stressed, I had to dump them in the East River. But that's basically what I did. I spent about a month being a neo-Luddite with one of those dumb phones that doesn't connect to the internet, and staying away from social media and all those other things, and it didn't fix the problem. So in terms of peeling back the layers, I started moving historically, and I started tracking the measures that we have of overwork and stress, and especially the bleeding of the boundaries between work and home life, since that's a big part of the problem. And it brought me back to the moment basically when all of this changed, which was, of course, James Watt, his steam engine, and the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
My goodness, that is quite a ways back. Talking about bleeding the boundaries of home life and work life, I think that this is a moment where most of us are feeling that right now. We have some people joining us from the stream I wanted to say hello to. We have Elma from Texas. Michelle says, yes, I'm feeling burnt out, but not really understanding why.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a common feeling that we're going to be getting into on the show today. Sarah says, I always work from home, but I've definitely been feeling burnt out, and it's harder being confined and not having any interaction. To be honest, Karen says, exactly. you work from home and you think it's flexibility, but it can also mean you're always on. So let's talk about that work from home moment. I think when we're, 6, 7, 8 weeks, whatever, however long ago the other world we lived in felt real. Working from home, probably, maybe some people already did it. To some people, it was an option they had for flexibility here and there. To some might have yearned for a work situation where they could work from home and call all the shots on their time. But now here we are, all thrown into it, whether we were interested in it or not. Talk to me about work from home. Is it all it's cracked up to be?
No, I worked from home, but I had the option of, traveling. I would go out like everybody else. And it's interesting. Some of the research shows that those, what they call weak ties, the little short conversation about the weather you have with a barista or with your grocery store clerk, those actually have a pretty big impact, a double digit impact on your happiness and your feelings of well-being. So even if were working from home, you're missing out on those weak ties that you used to have in addition to the freedom to go where you want. But no, working from home is not all it's cracked up to be. So let me try to explain this in as reasonable a way as possible. If you're having insomnia, your sleep doctor will very likely tell you, make sure you use the bed only for sleep. Right. And the reason behind this is pretty clear. You want to make sure that your brain knows that when you get into bed, it's time to go to sleep and not do work, not answer phone calls or eat or watch TV, but sleep. The same thing is true with your own home. What's happening right now is that it's very tempting to just pick up your laptop or your tablet or your smartphone and just wander around your house. You're like, oh, it's a great day. I'll sit on my front stoop and I'll work from there. And what you're really doing is training your brain that your house is not your home, it's a workplace. And so basically your brain ends up being on alert and working all day long. It's in work mode all day. And if you work in bed, it's probably interfering with your sleep as well. And if you add this into all the anxiety we're already feeling because of the state of the world, then that adds up to a pretty rough, stressful, anxious time at home. So the solution to this is you have to designate a space in your house for work. And honestly, it doesn't matter how big your apartment is. I lived in New York. I know some of them are ridiculously small. And it doesn't matter if you're sharing it with other people. Even if all you have is the corner of a table, you take masking tape and mark that corner off. And when you are in that corner, you're working. And when you step away from that space, you are not working anymore. And if you're, watching TV and you suddenly get a work call, you move your body over to that workspace and you take that work call there, and then you move your body out of it and you go back to living. You need to train your brain that your home is a refuge and it's okay to relax.
If you're just joining us now, we are talking with Celeste Headlee. She is the author of Do Nothing: How to Break Away from Overworking, Overdoing, and Underliving. We're talking about this work from home moment, about the stress, about the burnout I think a lot of us are feeling. And Celeste, you're just telling us we really have to designate space in our homes physically for when we're working so that there can be an on place and an off place. Is there something similar we should be doing with our time? I hear from a lot of people who have to time shift. Maybe they're caring for children, or they have to share space with a partner. They're caring for someone elderly. They're volunteering in their community. And you end up working not 9 to 5 or 8 to whatever. You work in little chunks and it just seems like it's constant. Should there be boundaries around that too, knowing that that could be actually a hard thing to construct right now?
It can be hard, and each solution is going to be individual. But yeah, you have to choose a starting time and an ending time. And you also have to make sure you're taking a break once an hour. So you need to choose, at this time in the morning is when I start work. This is when I would enter my office place if I had an office. And this is when I would leave. And when I leave the office, I'm done working. And I know that's difficult. I know you may be the only person among your group of coworkers that's doing that. But if you want to maintain your well-being, it's really important. And if there's any managers out there listening to me, this is something I urge you to have all of your employees and coworkers do. A starting time and ending time. Make sure you make a break for lunch, and make sure you're getting up and taking a break once every hour. The reason for this is neurological. Our brains are not designed to work well if they're just keeping their nose to the grindstone. That's not how we work. The human brain needs to pulse. It needs to pulse between activity, focused activity, and leisure. Focused activity and leisure, or idleness. That doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It means you're not on a focused work project, right? So For most people, the average person, that amount of focused activity they can do is maybe 45 to 55 minutes at a time before you need to stand up and take a break. And it's super important that during that break, you walk away from your screens.
Yeah, so this show is probably going to be about 30 minutes. So when it's over, everyone should get up and take a walk around, put your screen down for at least a few minutes so you can get some of that time to kind of marinate and let the good creative thoughts come through. Celeste, we're getting a lot of great comments in the stream here. Members are talking about lack of boundaries as well and their struggle with that. Shivam says, I'm feeling like I need to breathe since I've been working longer since doing work from home. I can't make out the boundaries between work life and home life. I hear you, Shivam. I mean, all of us, I think, who are in the working from home situation, who aren't used to that, are feeling that. Like Celeste is telling us, you have to demarcate your space, you have to put boundaries on your time, and it's hard. And if you're only 2, 3, 4 weeks into this, maybe you're still trying to put that together. Kinshuk says the lack of boundaries between home and work is challenging. I hear that. Bonnie says that she had a home office job for 12 years, but with her kids and her husband now home all the time too, she's feeling extra fatigued. The work and the household management right now is really wearing me out. Can we talk about that too, Celeste? We have the work that we're doing for our office jobs or whatever our jobs are as essential workers, bringing us out into the world. But everyone at home who you're quarantining with is also under duress, and their rhythms have changed as well. Is there a different way that we should think about that work and that burnout too, the home work and the work?
Yeah. Number one, this is not the time to be productive at home. This is not the time to be starting your Pinterest projects or deciding you're going to figure out a new recipe for rye bread or any of those things. Compassion for the world starts with you. You have to have compassion for yourself before you can have compassion for anyone else. So, first of all, don't aim for a clean home, aim for a neat home. And frankly, if your home is messy, who cares? Who cares? You're not inviting people over to see it. So it's okay to let some of that stuff go. This is also not the moment, if it ever was the moment, to worry about scheduling every moment of your kids' time. Frankly, our kids have been overscheduled for a very long time. It is totally not just okay to let your kids be bored. It is a goal. It should be a goal for you to let your kids experience boredom, because boredom is a very fertile, fecund state of mind for a human being. That's when they become most creative and most innovative. So allow your kids to be bored. The other thing is about, in terms of demarcating your space and your time, you need to let the other people you're living with, whomever they are, know that when you are in that workspace, that's when you're not to be bothered. And then you can step out of that workspace and deal with what's going on at home. That's super important, that you don't feel the dual pressures of a home at work. It's one of the reasons why, they've done studies in which they've shown that working moms are actually less stressed than stay-at-home moms. And that's partly because they have somewhere they can go to in which they can, at least for that moment, set aside the cares of the household. That's so difficult right now. And so you're going to have to create those boundaries all on your own. But by creating these boundaries, you're actually freeing yourself.
It's funny that you mentioned bread, because my husband just turned to me this week and said, I think I want to make bread. And I said, I was waiting for this to happen. We're 7 weeks in. It's the bread period.
Yeah.
He started to become a really great home cook, and I knew it was just a matter of time. Yeah, our house is pretty much a mess. And you're right, no one's coming over. I
Who
mean,
cares?
on the camera it looks okay enough, but on the other side, I understand my internet's a little bit slow sometimes. So if you have trouble hearing me, I'll just ask again. But we're getting a lot of really nice comments from the stream. We have Monica, who is reminding us to be grateful. She is thankful that she's working from home because she still has a salary coming in every 2 weeks. So certainly, I am grateful too to be working, even if it's a little bit difficult sometimes. Can you talk to me, Celeste, about social energy? I want to pull up for a minute. You wrote an article on LinkedIn a few weeks ago talking about, if you want to boost your productivity, take a break, a real one. And I thought what was really interesting in this article was that your brain really can't tell if your break is Twitter or your break is Instagram or LinkedIn, whatever. If your break is still on a screen, your brain can't really tell the difference between it being work and a break. Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Yes. So, one of the most common things that we do is when we do get an extra 15 minutes or something, we immediately pull out our smartphones and we catch up on Facebook. There's studies showing that the two things, first of all, over half of people check their cell phones within like 10 minutes of waking up in the morning, and the first things they check are texts and social media. The problem is that your brain doesn't distinguish between that and work. We even know that if you're the type of person that keeps your email inbox open on your computer at all time, maybe you have all your tabs open and one of them is always Gmail or Outlook. Your brain is constantly thinking about that open inbox, and it's preparing to respond to an incoming notification. It doesn't distinguish between that and somebody knocking at the door or somebody yelling at you to come and see them. So it's constantly kind of in the runner stance, right? And this is true that if you use that as your break, if what your break is to, even if it's just online shopping, your brain thinks you're still working. So in essence, you haven't taken a break. I'm not telling you to get rid of your technology. I'm telling you that you have to give your brain a break from it. And in order to have a real break, a real refreshing moment, you have to be out of the sight of screens. Turn away from your computer, make sure your cell phone is in a drawer or out of sight, and then you can possibly break away. And what you were talking about in terms of social energy, this is really important because so many of us were anxious and we're staring at Twitter all day long, right? Or whatever our
Mhm.
social media is because we want to follow the news headlines. But again, you're working. That's all your brain is thinking, is you're actually working at that time. And the other part of it is that we delude ourselves that when we're on social media, Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, we think that that is a substitute for actual social connection. And it is, in fact, draining the limited amount of social energy you have that day, but it's not giving you back all the wonderful things that real connection does. Right now, I can see your face and I can hear your voice. That's authentic social connection. If I were to have a back and forth with you on Facebook, it's not. It's just going to make me feel miserable and drain my energy. And then I may not have the energy that I need at the end of the evening to talk to real people.
Yeah, or to make that bread, as Lynn in the stream says, the bread period is so true. She says our whole neighborhood embarked on bread making independently this past week. Lynn, I hope there's some sort of bread swap too that you can safely share your loaves with one another. Maybe have a contest. Tom says he's tried using a vacation day just for some mental health and a break from
Right.
longer days working from home. That's great to hear, Tom. I also see people talking about guilt. Feeling guilty for not using their time in the right way. There was actually a comment on the article we were just looking at, if we could pull up, from someone named Aman, who said that you had verbalized a feeling that he's been struggling with for a few years now, feeling guilty for relaxing or not relaxing properly. He feels like focusing on his goals when he's supposed to be relaxing is ruining that downtime, and that this was a reminder to him that being in the moment is just as important, if not more so. That is a good step to take forward. So that's the nice thing. We're seeing that, as we're talking today, we're seeing members in the stream say that. We're seeing Viveka say, my watch tells me to stand up and to breathe. Of course, I mostly ignore it. I mean, that's maybe a good mix of tech. It's reminding you to ignore the tech for a minute, but you do have to take the reminder. What do
Yeah.
you, yeah, go ahead.
Let me address that guilt here because this is one of the reasons. It's funny. I read one review of the book and they said there's all this history at the point at the beginning, and I don't know why. Well, the reason there's a bunch of history at the beginning of my book is to explain to you why you feel guilty, and to kind of release you from a little of the responsibility for that, because that's not you, that's us, and it's not even your fault. It's been literally we've been manipulated and brainwashed, and I mean this literally, to feel that guilt. And that's partly because we're supposed to be constantly feeding the industrial thirst for our time. And so there has been this kind of three-pronged manipulation of our minds. And this is going back almost 300 years. It came from our employers, it came from our governments, and it came from our religion. If you think about the Protestant work ethic and others that told us that idle hands are the devil's playground. So, of course, you feel guilty. We've all been raised that way. Our parents were raised that way, going back generation after generation. So, keep that in mind when you sit down and you feel guilty. You say, hey, I've been manipulated to feel this way and I reject it. Because that's not the way a human being works. I mean, our species. That is not the way Homo sapiens work. And the reason we're in this toxic era of humankind, let me put it to you another way. The average life expectancy in the United States has fallen now for 3 years in a row. And the doctor who was the lead author of the most current report on that, they asked him why people were dying younger, and he said, despair. We are at a point where this brainwashing that's occurred over the past 2 to 300 years has become toxic and harmful, and you have to uh, recognize that guilt and reject it so that we can move forward.
That is heavy. Despair, decreasing life expectancy. We've got to go flip somewhere positive on that one. We got to think about. Sarah wants to know. Okay, what do breaks look like? Stretching, sitting, social media breaks, text messaging to friends, text messaging a friend. That's a screen, but it's making a connection too. Is that considered a break in your manner of thinking?
So all the things you said that were not digitally mediated are a break. Stretching, walk outside for a second, read a novel, call someone on the phone. Don't text them, but call them on the phone. Anything that doesn't involve a screen is a break for your brain. Brush your dog. Making the bread is fine, although that's why we have a yeast shortage in the United States right now. I wonder if this is happening in other countries, right? Um, Taking a break is just walking away from your screens and your work. It means you are going to allow yourself for 10 or 15 minutes to produce nothing of value that you care about, right? Do the dishes. That's fine if that's what you need to get done. Or sit on your front porch and just stare at the street. Because frankly, i- oddly enough, that's going to be some of your most productive time, mainly because you're allowing your brain to be healthy, and your brain will wander. It'll make surprising connections. It'll sift through your memories, information that you've taken in recently, and it'll come up with new ideas, new solutions to things. So yeah, absolutely let your mind wander, but stay away from the screens because again, that's not authentic social connection.
Yeah. On the other side of that, Karen is in the stream asking if there's any advice if you really love your work and you are, as she considers herself, an avowed workaholic. She feels like it's a double-edged sword. She loves working, but all this advice is telling us to take a step back from that sometimes.
Yeah, I love my work too. But you're not helping your work and you're not getting more done by working really extra hours. They've done the studies over and over and over again, and I put careful footnotes in the book so you can trace back these studies yourself. For example, they followed a large group of scientists, and this is all way back in the 1950s, and they found that the least productive of all of them were those that worked more than 50 hours a week. The most productive were those who worked 12 to 20 hours a week. It's actually incredibly useful if you end up working with your body's strengths and the way that your brain is designed to work instead of trying to push it beyond its limits. Some of the greatest people in the world and most productive and accomplished worked 2 to 4 hours a day. Charles Darwin, Charles Dickens, Henri Poincaré, Gustave Flaubert, Mozart, Beethoven. So the workaholic is not a badge of honor. It's a cry for help. And you are not actually helping your work by working insane hours. You're actually inhibiting what you can do.
Yeah, we have a comment from Yashwant who says, in a very, very long version of yes, yes,
Yes,
surprisingly,
queen.
doing the dishes has helped me immensely with relieving my work stress, especially during my lunch break. So that's still work, that's housework, but it's getting you away from the
Yeah,
screen
it's
and
fine.
it's helping that creative period to happen. Lindsay is sharing that she's been doing with her team. They Skype twice a day, and she encourages them to take breaks, switch tasks, and enjoy downtime to put the work away. She says it matters when you're hearing that from your boss. I agree. But if you are a boss out there, listen to this and think about what you need to do to lead by example, to tell your team it's okay to do these things, which is actually going to benefit all of you. Caitlin has a question for you, Celeste. She says, as a single parent, how can I separate work time, kid time, lifetime? I feel like setting up boundaries is impossible when I'm the only adult and I'm still working full time while helping a 6-year-old with distance learning. A 6-year-old knows what masking tape is, can see the shape on the desk, but maybe doesn't quite understand the message that mommy's at work right now. What do you
And
suggest?
sometimes they don't want to. And frankly, this is a tough time for kids, and they are fraught also and anxious, and they're possibly more needy, just like we're all more needy. I was a single mom for most of my adult life, and there's nothing I'm going to tell you that's going to make that easier. But I can also say that teaching your kids good coping skills and teaching them to make that separation between work and life is going to incredibly help them with their well-being as they move forward in the future. The other thing is that keep your promises. If you say, I'm going to be done with this in an hour and then we'll play Monopoly or whatever your chosen thing is, or then we'll watch the movie, you need to keep your promise to that kid. Um, that's hard, and I get it. But if it's a conversation that you need to have your manager and that's possible, then I would have that conversation of, "Hey, just like everybody else, I'm at home. I have new duties in terms of helping my kid be in school online, and can we work out a schedule that will accommodate both things and my productivity will not drop at all?" Managers, most of them are willing and motivated to problem solve with you. But in terms of your kid, yeah, they're going to have to learn some boundaries, and they're going to have to understand when you're at work and when you're not. And that's when that demarcated area is going to help you.
Yeah, and if you're just joining us now, everyone, I'm Susie Jackson. This is Business Unusual, LinkedIn's live show where we're talking about coronavirus and the way it's impacting our work. I am in the middle of a great conversation with Celeste Headlee. She is the author of Do Nothing: How to Break Away from Overworking, Overdoing, and Underliving. We're talking about setting up boundaries around your space and around your time, leaving time in your day to come away from screens so you can let your brain have a little bit of a relax and a reset moment. We've got a lot of great comments in the stream. We have Vicky saying it's not the amount of hours you put in, but the results you achieve. I think that would be a wonderful lesson to take past the pandemic back into our work lives. Um, Akan Shah says, can we talk about job insecurity causing this burnout and how to handle that?
So my income when the pandemic, my income is over 90% from speaking engagements. So my income went from quite high to zero overnight. Um, that means I understand my own situation. It means I don't really understand anybody else's, but I can at least empathize with fears over job insecurity. Um, the main thing I would tell you is that pushing yourself harder and harder and harder isn't necessarily going to help you get a job. Um, so even though you are maybe looking for more work or looking for work period, if you are worried about money coming, making yourself compromising your immune system, making yourself tired and exhausted and stressed out is not going to help you achieve any of those things. So even though it feels like you're worried, and sometimes when you're very, very worried, you feel like you want to do something, you want to take some action and that will make you feel better. Actually allowing yourself to refresh and recover and keeping your immune system strong is better. Think of it this way. When you stress yourself out, what ends up happening is your amygdala takes over and you go into fight or flight mode. Fight or flight mode is what you want if there's a tiger chasing you. It is not the part of your brain that you want controlling you through the rest of your life. So you don't need a toddler driving the car. And that's basically what your amygdala is. They're just based on fear. You need to make sure that your prefrontal cortex, your executive thinking making takes over. And in order for that to happen, you need to let yourself relax and recover.
Yeah, the tigers aren't chasing us. You're right. I mean, if there's a tiger in this house, I would have noticed it by now. But I do have that feeling all the time. And I think I'm seeing in the stream a lot of other people are as well. Ada says that, I love this. It says, it brings me comfort hearing so many people sharing the same experiences. That's new territory for so many of us. I haven't quite found my balance yet, but trying to be gentle with myself. I think that's an important point to hit on as well, is be gentle with yourself and with everyone else around you. Everyone is experiencing this heightened anxiety, this uncertainty all together. And it's a really nice time for some grace and for some space to let other people kind of find their way through this with you as well. Celeste, last couple of questions. What are some tips with that being gentle in mind for other ways to cope through this? We've talked about setting boundaries and putting down your screen, sometimes being more strict about your time. What's something that you can do to make yourself feel good that maybe helps another person as well?
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly it. One of the best ways to increase your empathy and reduce stress and feel better, just improve your mood, is just to do something nice for somebody. And I know that it feels like sometimes you're so stressed and overwhelmed, maybe it feels like you don't have anything left in the tank to give to anyone else. But in fact, study after study shows that, yes, it's good. Whatever you do, that's nice, is good for the other person, but it has a huge beneficial impact on you. It distracts you from your own problems. It gets you thinking about somebody else. It gives you context on what's happening with you. Sometimes it gives you new problem solving ideas, but even more, it gives you what's called the helper's high, which is this burst of endorphins that make you feel happier. And it doesn't have to be big. It can be big, but you don't have to be changing the world. It can be something as small as me and my friends. Every Saturday, we make sandwiches for the local food bank and deliver them over there so they have things to eat. You can do all kinds of small things. You can reach out to someone that you think may be lonely and afraid as well, and just let them talk. All of those small things that you do will end up having a huge impact on your own well-being and your sense of happiness and pleasure.
Now, Celeste, a little off the track, I know that you are a singer. Is there anything you're doing in that vein of your life right now that is making you feel good about the other spaces in your life that are a little bit uncertain?
Yeah. I listen to music constantly. I also have been doing my voice lessons still while I'm in quarantine. My voice teacher does them by Zoom, and they actually go really well. I just had one a couple days ago, and it was thrilling because I made a huge breakthrough in terms of one of my singing issues that only singers might understand. But yeah, I make sure that I make time for that music. One of the things I hope that comes away from this pandemic, and I don't want to in any way, shape, or form downplay the danger of the pandemic and the suffering going through those who have had it or lost a loved one. But one of the possible silver linings is I hope people can begin to think about who they are when they're not working. I don't think we've asked ourselves that very much. Who are you when you're not at work? What are the things you like to do that are just not really all that productive and don't belong in your CV? Maybe it's making bread. That seems to be the answer for a lot of people. But what is that? What is it you like to do that's not connected to work or your brand or social media or anything else? That's a wonderfully productive question to ask yourself.
I think that's a great question for all of us to end on. Celeste, thank you so much for joining us. I found this really helpful and insightful. I know people in the stream did as well. Maybe you can tell us in the comments later what that singing issue was that you finally made a breakthrough on. It would be so good to hear that you're making progress in something that you love.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Susan.
Thank you. Take care. Everyone, that was Celeste Headlee. She is the author of Do Nothing, How to Break Away from Overworking, Overdoing, and Underliving. She was joining us here on Business Unusual, LinkedIn's live show, where we were talking about coronavirus and the ways it is impacting the way we work. Thank you so much for joining us today. It felt great to hear your comments, to see you connecting with one another, to hear that you were going through a lot of these things too together, and that we could talk about it here and have a space to figure it out and be a community. We are live from the LinkedIn editors page every weekday at noon Eastern. Please join us next week. We'll be back on Monday. Thank you and stay safe.